Hi, I'm Dave Luong, and you're listening to Trek Rant, the Star Trek podcast where I rant, rave, overanalyze, and obsess about all things Trek. This is a quick mini podcast which I'll be doing, which you can find on the United Geek Federation's YouTube page or at our official website, www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com. Today, I'll be talking about Wesley Crusher, a character who I was going to say that he's mostly disliked, but I don't think that's true either. But I'll say this. A character who elicits an ambivalent reaction from Star Trek fandom in generally speaking. Now, I do want to make this distinction. I love Wil Wheaton from everything I've seen him in post-Star Trek in terms of just his personality. From what I've seen, he comes off as a really funny guy. He comes off as a really nice guy. He comes off as a really great guy. So I don't want anyone to think I'm bagging on Wil Wheaton. Wesley Crusher, on the other hand, the character he played, I think that there's a lot of room for improvement, and that's what the premise of today's show is going to be. First off, I'm going to start with some of the reasons that I personally didn't like Wesley that much, which I think a lot of other Trekkies share with me. So first off, I think that Wesley kind of came off as this know-it-all character, this kind of character who just pops up on the bridge all of a sudden. He just happens to know via some strange, out of lack of a better term, deus ex machina, how to solve any situation that the next gen crew are in. And for me, that didn't serve to make Wesley look like a better character. It made him look, well, A, it made him look annoying, and B, it made the rest of the crew look really bad, because here you have the Enterprise, who are supposed to be the best of the best that the Federation, that Starfleet have to offer. And here's this young kid who just pops up on the bridge, at least in the very, very early episodes, without any actual Starfleet training, and he has all the answers. So that kind of know-it-all depiction, again, didn't serve to make Wesley look like this great genius character. It just served to make everybody else look like an idiot in comparison. So that's one of the reasons why I personally didn't like Wesley so much. Another reason, and this is probably one of my chief reasons, the fact that he was even able to pilot the Enterprise to begin with, that he was able to even step foot on the bridge, just reeks of nepotism. I mean, the fact that he's the son of Beverly Crusher, who just happens to be one of Picard's old flings / the son of one of Picard's old friends, Jack Crusher. That just reeks of nepotism, because it's not like, at least again in the early episodes, it's not like Wesley actually earned his place on the bridge by being a Starfleet officer who went through 4 years, however many years at the Academy. He just happened to be the son of a friend. Oh great, you're Beverly's son, you get to sit in the front seat, enjoy piloting the Enterprise, the flagship of the Federation. That kind of nepotism just made Wesley all the more annoying to me. So those are just some of the reasons why I personally didn't like the Wesley Crusher character. Now, that said, and this kind of goes back to some previous Trek Rant episodes I've recorded, such as how I would have written Voyager and how I would have written the original series. I'm going to do a little bit of an exercise right now and explain to you how I would have written Wesley Crusher. If I could just magically go back in time, or not even magically, maybe if I can use one of the many, many ways to travel back in time in Star Trek lore. If I could do that, sit in it during some of the Next Generation writing sessions, what I would have done to help improve the Wesley Crusher character. Because while I say that I didn't like the character too much, I don't think he was a case of being a completely unsalvageable character. For instance, I think that it is a good idea to have a younger character in a Star Trek television series. I think that if handled correctly, that character could be a great in for fans, for Trekkies, and for other viewers to be able to almost feel that that's the person they relate to, and that's the character who they imagine themselves being on the bridge of the Enterprise. So by no means do I think that having a younger character unto itself is a bad idea. But to help make that a little more palatable, so that he's just not this know-it-all character who just happens to be on the bridge of the Enterprise because of nepotism, first off, I would actually make him an officer. Now, I know that later on, Wesley does go to the academy and does become an actual ensign as opposed to an acting ensign. But right off the get-go, from first season on, from the very first episode, I would have actually made him an ensign. I would have had him actually already go through years at the academy so that he could have a reason to be on the bridge. I think that would remedy a lot of that know-it-all problem that he had, in that it would make him a part of the team by being an actual officer, by being someone who actually had a uniform, by being someone who actually earned his place by going through Starfleet Academy. So he wouldn't seem like just this kid who just walked on the bridge and just happens to know how to solve all the problems. He was actually a competent member of the bridge crew who just went to the academy like everybody else on the bridge crew. So I think that's the first thing I would do. I would actually make him an officer who went through Starfleet Academy and also, would wear a uniform and what have you. I think it was always weird how Geordi would have him do these engineering tasks while Wesley would be wearing that gray jumpsuit that he would wear, civilian garb essentially. And it was just always like, why are you getting Wesley to do this? Don't you have like 100 other competent officers, competent people who went through Starfleet Academy on the ship? Couldn't you ask him to do stuff for you instead? Them to do stuff for you instead? So I think that by having him be an officer and being able to work within the team, like have him basically be Geordi's sidekick or Geordi's apprentice, I think that, again, that would be something that would make Wesley a more palatable character in general. And probably in general, it wouldn't hurt to have him flesh out his relationship with the rest of the crew. I think I mentioned him being Geordi's apprentice, but he could have just as easily been Riker's apprentice, someone who Riker sees Wesley as basically a younger version of himself and wants to help train him, wants to almost make him his sidekick on the bridge. I think that would have been interesting. As well as maybe, like I said, Geordi could have been a mentor to Wesley if Wesley was an actual officer. And you could actually have that tangent off to, or dovetail, I should say, into having a great Data, Geordi, Wesley friendship. I know we're used to seeing Data and Geordi, their friendship, be fleshed out in Star Trek, but I think that you could also had Wesley find a way into that group. That's just a thought. I think I kind of went off a weird tangent there. But in any case, to take a few steps back, some other ways that I would improve on the Wesley character, while we're talking about character relationships, I would have him and Picard have more of a father surrogate son relationship. I could see that there were a few attempts at them doing that here and there. You would occasionally get these episodes where Picard would mentor Wesley, but I think they could have pushed that a little bit further. I think they could have done a little more with that. For obvious reasons, that Wesley is the son of Picard's friend. So you could see a little bit of Picard, being someone who never had kids of his own, wanting to almost treat Wesley like a son, as opposed to saying something like, "Shut up, Wesley," the infamous line that totally de-sold Wesley for every episode after that one. And before anyone accuses me of being contradictory, the way I see this as being different from... I know earlier I complained that one of my problems with Wesley was that he seemed to come off as a case of him being on the bridge is a case of nepotism. And now all of a sudden I'm saying that I would want to see Picard and Wesley develop more of a father and son relationship. I think you could depict Picard and Wesley having a more family relationship, being more closer to one another, without it coming off as nepotism. I could see actually Picard being even harder on Wesley in terms of being more of a strict boss, as it were, to Wesley, because sometimes the people you're hardest with are family members. So I think that would be a great angle for Wesley to have, just him be Picard's surrogate son, but at the same time Picard is just harder on Wesley than anybody else on the bridge, but he doesn't cut him any slack. He doesn't put him on the bridge just because he's the son of his friend, or even a surrogate son to Picard. He puts him on the bridge because he's the best officer, and because he's one of the best officers, I should say. And because he's one of the best officers, he just pushes him that much harder and is that much stricter with him. Lastly, one of the things I would do to help improve the Wesley character is I would get rid of the whole traveler arc that eventually led to Wesley becoming a traveler himself. I think that Wesley Crusher's primary story arc should have been the story of a young ensign who starts out on the bridge as just a lowly ensign. He establishes friendships, he establishes his relationships and what have you, and basically throughout the 7 seasons of the show, you see him becoming more and more of an adult, more and more of a professional, and eventually becoming a full-fledged bridge officer or even a commanding officer. Maybe it could have led to him in one of the movies, I don't know, becoming the science officer of his of another ship, or something to that effect. Who knows? But to me, the idea of a young ensign moving up the ranks and eventually becoming a full-fledged command officer himself, to me that's a much more fascinating story than the actual story they did end up giving Wesley throughout the series. That of some bizarre, nigh omnipotent traveler saying that Wesley is special, and then it eventually ending with Wesley himself becoming a nigh omnipotent space being of some sort. I think that just kind of sounds silly to me. At any case, just to recap, some of the ways that I would improve upon the Wesley Crusher character. First off, I would make him a Starfleet officer from the get-go, have him go through Starfleet Academy, have him earn his place on the bridge. Second, I would improve his relationships with the rest of the crew, maybe have him work as sort of the apprentice, the sidekick of Riker or Geordi, and that would of course dovetail into friendships with the other characters on equal footing, by the way, kind of solidifying a friendship with Data and Geordi, and not just have him be, honestly, the annoying kid who just hangs out in the hallways, who just happens to be there occasionally, and who doesn't feel like an equal to anybody else. And then on top of that, another way I would improve on the Wesley Crusher character is I would really underline the fact that he is Picard's surrogate son, which wouldn't lead to nepotism, but it would actually lead to Picard pushing him even harder, just making sure that he earns his place on the bridge. And lastly, I would change Wesley's primary arc from that of being eventually leading to him being a nigh omnipotent space traveler. I would change that to his primary story arc being that of an ensign who makes his way up into being a full-fledged commanding officer. At any case, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I want to really reiterate, I love Wil Wheaton. I think he's a great, from what I've seen at least, he comes off as a great guy. He comes off as a really funny guy. I love Wil Wheaton. It's just Wesley Crusher. I think that you could have improved on that character. But what do you think? How would you have written Wesley Crusher? Do you think he needed to be rewritten at all? Was he already a very good character in your eyes? Or do you think that he just wasn't necessary on the bridge at all, that you would have just totally not had Wesley be a character in Star Trek The Next Generation? Leave a comment on this YouTube page or visit us at our official website at www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com and leave a comment. Also, please subscribe so you can receive updates on future podcasts, not just this one, but other shows on the United Geek Federation channel. I'm David Luong, and thanks for listening to Trek Rant.